Hi everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Very Tired Faz.
And I'm also quite tired, Rich.
We're both very knackered, so expect high energy. Yeah, absolutely on it. Bank holidays. For one reason or another. I know you said, we were just talking about before, but why you were saying you were tired, you were up a little bit early, and I was saying, like, I've been to Slam Dunk Festival this weekend, Arcade Club, and then also, I didn't mention, but Rowan's also, like my little one, just suddenly, out of nowhere, they just predict it, don't they, children? They just predict that you're going to be doing something like social and enjoying yourself and really busy, and that might stretch you, you know, from a tiredness point of view. And then they're like, yeah, I'm just going to be ill, mate. I've just got to get a really bad cold and cough. And I'm obviously not blaming him, but I'm like, oh God, it's just another thing to handle. So, yeah, it wasn't those kind of weekends, but an amazing one. So, yeah,
nice.
Really cool. And it's been about 100 episodes since we did our Slam Dunk 2 years ago.
God,
so,
really?
Yeah, I know. It's like a bit crazy, really. So, but yeah, no drunken reporting this time. No me asking about Gogo Bordello or anything. But what we are going to speak about this week is we are looking at the Red Dead series. But I guess that a lot of people probably would have spoken a lot of times about Red Dead Redemption 2, with it being the most recent game. And I guess also probably the one that you would think, looking at it, is the one that I think most people love the most, and possibly even a lot of people would say it's one of their favourite games ever, would be where I think that sits. But we're going to look at Red Dead Revolver and Red Dead Redemption. So I've never really played. I've never played all of Red Dead Redemption. And again, the similar sort of situation with Red Dead Redemption 2. I just started playing it and kind of stopped. And it wasn't because I didn't like it. Just never really it never drove me to want to be in it. So it's like I'll be really interesting to hear what you've got to say as you'll be reviewing Red Dead Redemption. What you say about that. And there are probably people screaming at the podcast now, like, "What? You've never done this, never done that? But you've played all of Red Dead Revolver?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I have, yeah."
I haven't.
Well, yeah. So hopefully it'll be interesting for you to, hear that anyway. But
I rage quit.
Well, Red Dead Revolver, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay, that'd be all right.
No, it just got too annoying.
All right, cool. That's interesting. Right, okay, we need to get to that point then. So, I'll start reviewing Red Dead Revolver, shall I? And then you can tell me why you rage quit it, and we'll see if it matches up with anything I had feeling-wise about Red Dead Revolver.
Fair enough.
Interesting. How are you with westerns? And do you like the idea?
Do I like them? Do I know all about them?
Yeah, either really. Are you quite knowledgeable about westerns with your wonderful...
would not say I was quite knowledgeable.
Okay.
I like them. I definitely lean sort of more towards your kind of spaghetti end of the scale.
Yeah.
Rather than your kind of John Wayne's and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely got a soft spot for them. And without spoilering what I'm going to be talking about too much, many boxes get ticked.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Did you know that it'd been Red Dead Redemption's 15th birthday last week?
No, I didn't actually.
No, I know, and that it came and went, and I was like, oh, we're doing... that podcast, I was like, I don't understand. I can't believe we've accidentally almost lined it up, but true to form with our absolute shit organisation, we're a week out, so we almost did something absolutely incredible.
Pretty close.
Yeah. And yet here we are. Okay, cool. So let's find out about your rage quitting of Red Dead Revolver then. Rage Dead Revolver. I don't know. So. 2004 then, PS2 and Xbox from Rockstar San Diego, but it wasn't really necessarily from Rockstar San Diego. So at the time, it was Angel Games were co-developing the game with Capcom all the way back in 2001, I think it was. So it'd been going for quite a while, and they I'd say developed nearly all the game. That is in, and it was some creative differences between Capcom and Angel Games, and I read a really cool article about it actually. Not very often that you kind of go back and research some of the games for the podcast or anything at all, where you find like an actual article written specifically about the development of that game because of all the things that went on about it. I don't need to go into all that detail now, but it was just interesting that basically it was a bit of a, I guess, a west and east sort of difference in terms of what they expected from the game. And Capcom were quite happy for Angel Games to, like basically the whole project was kind of getting dropped, and it was like, and then Rockstar were like, right, we're going to buy, Angel Games, and then they basically ended up picking up certain projects for them, and most of them just went, we're just going to can them, we want you to do this, we want you to do that. Angel Games were most famous for doing squeezing the whole of Resident Evil 2 onto the N64 cartridge.
Oh.
That was like probably their most famous thing. So,
Oh.
And everyone's like, that was like an incredible feat that happened.
Yeah.
So they did a pretty good job with that. And then after with Rockstar, they did Smuggler's Run and Midnight Club. They were heavily involved in those. That's what San Diego's most.
Right.
And then this game as well, which, like I say, was already kind of there anyway. But yeah, just interesting to see that Rockstar picked it up, and in about, I think it was like 9 to 12 months or something, then they turned it out into what they kind of wanted it to be, I think. The houses, they bought it, I think, with a long-term vision, which has clearly worked out that way. Yeah. Exactly, yeah, it's gone pretty well. How the West was won, like, there we are, yeah. And so, it's one of those things where you can see the joins in this game, I'd say, and like quite a lot. Not necessarily a bad way, but you can certainly see where the Capcom influence sits. So, for example, hopefully from you remembering when you played it, that with the duelling quick time events that you effectively have and stuff, and you kind of get that almost, you feel like you could play that with a light gun almost, that situation and things. It kind of reeks of Capcom almost in the way it looks and feels almost, and it feels like maybe it's like left over from the idea of, and it feels like maybe you can just imagine that being the very first idea that someone had for the game. Let's have a dueling game or whatever, and it's almost like, right, yeah, fair enough, and then built it up from there. But yeah, so I guess one reason I wanted to do this as well was to remember Red Harlow, the protagonist of Red Dead Revolver, mostly because Red Dead Revolver as a name, I guess, really is almost like it's a wonderful name, but they then therefore called their main, the protagonist Red, and he's not really spoken about that much anymore. Really, he's not in the rest of the series. I know Rockstar kind of do a pretty good job of being able to sort of, I guess, divorce Revolver from from Redemption and Redemption 2 by not calling it the same thing. So clearly that was an active decision from them. So yeah, I want to kind of remember him a little bit. Red and his massive square head, basically. He has got the biggest chin. I don't even remember, but like graphically, certainly when I was playing on the PlayStation 2, it definitely feels quite low fidelity, and also like all of the characters look like, you remember the Guitar Hero characters where everyone just had massive heads, like I said, and it was almost like
very cartoony. Yeah,
and like that era of PS2 where it was like, it was funny because you look at what has been coughed out via Rockstar San Diego at the time, like you said, effectively the previous game of Angel Games. You look at what they've developed, and then you look at, in a year later, San Andreas is kicking about, and you kind of go, "Oh, right, okay, that's the difference between the years and years of development by a company that does what they're doing, and obviously these guys that have clearly had a game in mind and had to change to whatever Rockstar will have said at the end." So yeah, but there's definitely a difference between the quality of how the game looks, and it's of an era, would be a big head era. So yeah, do you remember much about the multiplayer part of Red Dead Revolver?
I remember it kind of being like a sort of third-person-y kind of deathmatch type setup, reasonably small levels, if I remember rightly. Yeah. Quite a lot of climbing you could do onto like the top of roofs and things like that. You do remember
a lot about it. Well done.
Pretty chaotic, if I remember rightly as well.
Yeah. It's actually pretty good. Like, with all that considered and said into it, it is chaotic. Yeah, you're right. But I'd say the bot AI that you can have in there is pretty good. Like, is in they give you a good match, and you feel like you're actually, taking part in some sort of like actual deathmatch. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I played that for a little while. That was the first thing I kind of went to, because I was like, oh right, I'll try it out just to see what it's like for the podcast. And I remember that, and it's funny because, again, you don't know how much Rockstar's had their hand in it, but it certainly feels like something that they do quite well when it comes to multiplayer little arenas. Like the Warriors, I remember, for example, they had a good multiplayer little arena sort of thing, whether that was local co-op or not. But yeah, with this, it was just interesting to see that they'd done a pretty good job. But it was, yeah, you're absolutely right, chaotic and a bit weird and a bit kooky. And you do like sort of climb around a bit and stuff, and yeah it's just I enjoyed it, but I didn't need to see a lot of it.
Yeah, I get that.
And the reason I was asking about it is just because then I guess the rewards that you earn from the single player game all go towards you earning things to play the multiplayer game. They're pretty much that is in. So you unlock characters and different types of weapons and things for the multiplayer game based on how well you play the single player game, and that's just like, I guess that, again, of its era, that you kind of get those sort of rewards. Now as you get achievements, or you would, like, as in you get trophies and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was sort of funny to see that what I thought was going to be a complete side, like sort of helping of the game, actually a lot of the game is like kind of like trying to drive you to use those things later on, whether it's unlocking arenas and things. So I guess they were trying to look for longevity with that. So, but yeah, just a little point that I quite enjoyed the multiplayer. I don't know if you did or didn't when you did it, but yeah, I thought it was okay. Like, and when I say multiplayer, I was playing with bots, so the single player bot match. So like you say, yeah, so if we look at the single player then, so it's a third person shooter. And there's, I guess, with varying different types of levels, which was quite sort of funny to see. And this is where I kind of feel like I could see some of the joins, because it was almost like the types of levels that kind of came up. Again, I won't say this again now, but the last time I said this even is that, I don't know who developed this part or which part or whatever part and stuff, but you could just see there was like showdown sort of deathmatch kind of style, sort of like dueling levels. There was almost like little arenas where you're kind of like locked in, and it was like, in this arena you have to do this, and I'll come back to one of those levels later on. There was train chase levels as well, things like that, stagecoaches. It was like a bit of a grab bag of different types of levels.
Yeah.
The weakest ones are the walk here, shoot some guys, climb here, climb up some rocks, shoot some more guys, climb some more rocks, fight a mini boss. There felt like quite a lot of them, and for considering it's 2004, and you kind of think about the types of games that are around then, and I'm thinking just randomly, for example, when I think about Splinter Cell Chaos Theory that I give 9 out of 10 the other week, to think that how amazing and detailed those levels are, and you kind of look at these and go, these are a bit weak, like it's in like mostly like, and the maps don't kind of really represent, or they don't feel like they represent actually what the actual world looks like. So yeah, it is definitely a bit of a clusterfuck. Not a horrendous one, but just a bit like, all over the place really. The good thing is that even though that is a bit crazy, the simple parts of it, I guess the bits that do really well, is when they keep things simple, such as like your health bars, your ammo constraints. There's not too many weapons, but the weapons kind of like seem to almost self-level. Like, they don't explain that. It's almost like, oh, your weapon's been upgraded, and you're like, oh, okay. But I never noticed any difference really in the stats that they were given for the weapons, to be honest. Like, isn't it? It's almost like the only thing I noticed was the reload speed, because some of them are really, really slow. Which is fair enough, they do advertise that, but that was the only thing I kind of really saw a difference in the weapons. That is I felt like I could use a pistol as like a sniper rifle. Like, isn't it? Well, apart from on the PS2, you can't see shit. Like, but generally it was almost like, it didn't feel like, and it would offer you like one or two different types of rifles, one or two different types of shotguns, and one always seemed really clearly worse than the other one, and it was like, so I'll never use that gun. It didn't seem to make any sense. It wasn't as if it had like, a stat that was like, fast reload, but low accuracy, for example. They just seemed to be mixed to the point where it's like, right, well, that's the pistol you should use, that's the rifle you should use. So again, that part of it was a bit like, even though it was nice and simple, it just didn't seem to make any difference whatsoever to your gameplay choices. I don't know if that was like anything that you'd experienced at all, that is in that you remember. When did you last play it? Sorry, when you...
I mean, I got it on my PS4. It was one of the PS2 classic ones on there. I think I possibly got a couple of upgrades, but I really don't remember much, because I think I tapped out comically quickly.
Should we stop dancing around the point then? What made you rage quit Red Dead Revolver? Do you remember now?
So, if I remember rightly, there's a level with a lot of artillery fire. And possibly a bridge. And,
Colonel Darren.
Yeah, and it's kind of riffing on, I think it might be a sequence in like The Good, the Bad and the Ugly or something like that.
Yeah.
Kind of riffing on that.
Yeah.
And that level was so frustrating.
Yeah, it really was.
Like, so frustrating. And like, I like to think that when I stop playing a game, it tends not to be a conscious decision. It kind of peters out, and then I realise I haven't played it for a while, and I'm like, actually, I kind of don't really feel the need to pick it up again and go back, at least for a while, and it'll sit, and I'll get round to picking it up again at some point. This game was one of the few where I'm like, you know what, I am actively stepping away from this. That level, or little clutch of levels, I can't remember how they divide them up. I think it might be like checkpointed and like a boss fight or something like that. But between the combination of where the checkpoints were, what you have to do, what happens to you on the way, and it was all just, I could not play well enough to get through it comfortably in a way that I was going to retain my sanity.
I think that level was the level that took me the most attempts to do.
That's reassuring for me.
Yeah, and to be honest, weirdly enough, and again, the lumpiness of this game, I found Red Dead Revolver, apart from like the one or two levels every so often, quite unchallenging. That is insane, but that was definitely one of those. So it was like, I felt like I could just kind of glide through it pretty much, like apart from that. Like that level, or some of the duels, like in some of the duels, like again, they became very much like, oh, this is easy, impossible. It's like what?
I remember there being a couple of moments early on where I was like, oh, this is kind of tricky, and it would take me like a couple of attempts. But then there was that level, and it was like, suddenly having to scale a however many foot wall in real life, when you've just been jogging along nicely on flat ground for however long. And it was just, it was too much. It was too much.
So that's good though, because it does bring to mind a couple of points I want to make then. So you do get to play as different characters during this game, which I think is pretty cool. That is, and it does kind of like flip-flop, and that might be why people don't necessarily kind of associate yourself with Red too much, because he's one of your least favourite things is kind of like a mute protagonist, as in, so he doesn't really. You can kind of paint. I like that, but as we discussed previously on, I think it was a Bioshock and Trepang Squared podcast. I think that is in that nobody's listened to. That is in. I think on there we had a discussion about whether we like the mute protagonist or not. Because we were talking about Bioshock, and it's like. And also you get to change away from Red at regular intervals, that is in so different levels, and one of those levels is that one where you play, effectively you're playing the villain of the piece, or one of the villains of the piece, and you go back into his history, which I thought was a cool concept that they're trying to do that. It was almost like you get to see all the people that are involved in this story. Just the story's a bit shit, like, as in it's not horrendous, but it's just like, nothing much really necessarily happens.
I've been sat here since you started talking about it, trying to remember much of anything.
I will tell you. So, Red Harlow, as a young child, his parents, a gang attacks his parents, and they are killed. And Red manages to escape because he picks up a gun, burns his hand on a revolver, hence why he gets a red hand. And also, but I think Red's actually his name, because I think his mum is Native American, and I don't know whether or not that was like just his name that was given to him or not, but then it's almost like, oh, he's got a red hand and stuff. Anyway, blah blah. And so he basically becomes a bounty hunter, and kind of falls into this quest for revenge, but not really. Like, as in, you're not like, it never tells you until really late on, like as in the game, where you kind of get to the point where you're like, oh right, it's coalescing to the point now where I get what he's doing, but he's not really doing that. He's just going from like bounty to bounty to kind of like, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, we're up against the people who killed my dad. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, it is odd.
It's funny how you have a setup like that, and then the person involved never like becomes an accountant.
Yeah,
or whatever, do they? Like, it's always, I've become a bounty hunter.
Yeah.
I've learned how to fire a gun. I've learned how to kill people. Like, it's never, I'm just going to go and,
just be a fisherman.
Yeah.
And you think that probably would happen, because you'd be like, oh, I don't want this to happen to me or
just
my
go
family
live
or
a
whatever.
quiet life somewhere, learn a trade. My family got killed, so I became a plumber.
There's not many plumbers in the Wild West.
Well, that point. Bad example.
But although, interestingly that you say that, so when I was like, again, talking about westerns before, and I quite like sort of again, same as you, the spaghetti westerns of the world and stuff, and you look around and actually nearly all of it is not really, as you probably expect when I say this sentence, none of it is really steeped in any truth at all about the Wild West. It wasn't.
Well, no, true.
The West wasn't that wild, apparently. Do you know what I mean? It was more that it was the conditions that you'd live in, rather than actually anything that was going on. There was barely any of this situation happening that happens in Red Dead Revolver Redemption.
My family all got killed, so I became a barber.
Yeah. I mean, that probably did happen more. Yeah. It's probably more likely to have happened.
Where's that film? Yeah. Dear Hollywood, or not Hollywood,
It's a musical, isn't it? Is that not? Oh, yeah. Where were we? The story, it's quite basic, yeah. There's not a lot going on that I'm, like, super shocked by or anything.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know whether Rockstar had a hand in the story or not, or whether it feels like it certainly has their hand on the tiller, because it has pretty much the exact same sort of thing where the bad guy ends up being like the establishment, and it's almost like you're going after like what's he called again? The councillor or whatever he's called. I can't remember what he's called now. The main dude, basically Griff, who basically you find out like you're after him, and yeah, they have a real sort of thing where it's like, I remember in San Andreas, for example, that ends up, it's the police chief that's the bad guy. It's like, they just hate, they hate the establishment, the man. It's always the man Rockstar are after, and it very much is that in this, so.
It's easy to make your voice heard when you're shouting from atop a mountain of money, isn't it?
Yes, exactly, yeah. So you make your way around these sort of bounties, like I say, kind of a bit haphazardly. People just seem to offer you jobs and without even checking out your credentials. And just have a big head and some guns. And then you go into these you go into these sort of almost like arenas most times along these levels. There are some linear levels. There's absolutely no real world building, if I'm going to be honest. There is one hub called Brimstone, that basically, one is like the main hub, Brimstone Town, and it's almost like going back to like that Driver GTA 3 sort of situation where every building's pretty much locked, but it does at least tell you that there's a reason why you can't go in here, X, Y, and Z. But you see in this game, you see all of the roots of Red Dead Redemption. And 2 in terms of a lot on the aesthetics, basically. So the sounds, that isn't even in the menu, like the gunfire, sort of like when you select something and it fires a pistol. All of the text is all of the Red Dead Redemption sort of text and things, and and you get you go to a town, you can go into the shop to change your clothes, or you can go into the weapons shop and you use a catalogue to look for the anything, whatever you're buying at the time, whether it is guns or clothes. So you kind of get the same thing where you're like, oh, that's nice that when I think back to the amount of Red Dead Redemption 2 that I've played, that still sticks around later on, because actually it does feel like a good. And like I said, I'm using the word aesthetics. That is almost like, as we've talked about before, the trappings, if you will, the trimmings around the actual main piece in the middle, which is a bit gloopy and odd. Those bits, actually, they've kept, and you think, oh, that's really, really good. The other thing that they've kept, obviously, is the dead eye mechanism as well, which, again, that's always really fun. That is in being able to use that. In terms of the gameplay, again, another word that we use quite a lot of jank. It's I think it was the aiming sort of mechanism, really, that it was almost like the aiming sensitivity felt really off when you're mostly in third person. You can go into a first person Deadeye, which works really, really well, which basically is you get the slow motion shooting, and you get, is it 5 shots, I think it is, or whatever it is, and you get to basically pick, where you want to hit somebody. It's almost like your superpower, red superpower. And you get the duelling first person, which again is like a quick time event where you kind of just have to let the analog stick straight over the right place and then, press the trigger at the right time, and then that'll find the right spot and kill your opponent. But yeah, in the third person shooting bit, Red moves quite well. He moves around quite well, but when you're trying to move and gun and there's lots of enemies around, it's like it just seems to be really difficult to be able to actually properly aim. Like, as in, it does feel like the speed of which you can move your gun around, it doesn't match how fast you're moving. So it's almost like you're like, all right, I'm trying to escape these 12 sort of like, well, no, actually 20 little fucking mini weird clowns that have come out of nowhere from the circus with a mini boss called Pig Josh, who's running around topless after you, and Jack Swift, a Londoner, he is stuck in a cage hanging above you. It's just that's one of the levels that is in Red Dead Revolver. That is in, you get chased around by little mini clowns. When you're trying to avoid them and also, I guess, strafe away from them and shoot at them at the same time, you're moving quite quickly. You're like, oh yeah, I'm doing pretty well, but your gun is almost like dragging behind you, like you've got a massive cannon on your arm, like on the floor. And it's like, it isn't great, if I'm going to be honest. In terms of like that level, for example, and that's another thing I want to come on to. It yo-yos between great and like average, that is, if not probably a little bit below average. Like, that sounds stupid. It was quite fun to play. Like, it was almost like it was just a bit of a dumb fun. There's like, you get to play at one point as Jack Swift, and then the first level you play as him. It's almost like an undead nightmare. Like, is in front. Do you know what I mean? Like, again, you can see where they're kind of going with it and stuff. So you go from this western feel to the bosses in the level are kind of like, almost like phantoms, like, as in just turn it wherever they want, like, like click the fingers and go somewhere else. And it's just it. But again, you're like, where's this come from? Like, what? Like, how is this even part of the story? I don't understand. Like, what are you trying to do or tell me here? Because I don't get it. Like, it's in, like but then at the same time, I was like, but I'm also kind of having fun. But it's just anything that it just doesn't coalesce at all. And
sort of blundering into the kind of Weird West vibe a little too readily.
Yeah, and I'm not against that. It was just odd.
Well, especially if it just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And then the last thing, kind of like one of the levels, so one of the levels is that, this is more experience, this level anyway, so the train to Brimstone quite early on, I remember I had to write this one down because I was like, right, I need to remember that level because it was absolute chaos. So you're running along this train and basically there are lots of enemies that you're effectively kind of like you're working your way along the train killing, and it's really weird because like there's loads of like obstacles and stuff that are absolutely fine, but like the AI of your enemies is so shit that they kind of start chasing you down the train, running after you, and they're getting knocked over by all the obstacles and things and stuff, and it's just a farce. And then you work your way. I fell off the train at one point. And I thought, oh well, in any other game, you fall off the train. That's the end of that level, isn't it? That is in there. No, you're just stood at the side of the train, like, is it's just going past you, and I'm like, oh, I can get back on, right? Okay, but I'm miles away again, and I get hit by an obstacle, and I have to like sort of restart again. And then you get to the engineer. The engineer heals you, so he's a doctor, clearly. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And then there's another part of the level where you've got 3 minutes to defend the engineer, and you start getting attacked from, I guess, these fugitives on horseback who start coming towards you on the train. And also there are bad guys on the train as well. These enemies, certainly when I was playing it, were throwing themselves off the train for a minute. Like, there was a minute and a half of nothing happening apart from me laughing my ass off, watching these fugitives trying to sort of like come on these horses and physically not catching up with the train. And I'm like, I don't think this is meant to happen. And then also the other guys on the train were jumping off the train to their own death. And I was like, what? It's like, what's happening? It was just like, oh god. And it was just like, and then the last minute was like quite a challenging part where like they all just seem to get their shit together and start attacking you all at once. So you're like, no, there's too many of you now. Like, I don't understand. Like, so yeah, it does feel like, just again, going back to the word I like to use, very lumpy in terms of its execution. I remember really early on as well, there was a sub-boss called Ugly Chris, which feels a bit on the nose, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. I wasn't happy about that too much, but hey-ho. Yeah, it's okay. Do you know what I mean? It's quite serviceable. It's not Grand Theft Auto Vice City level, you know, like it's from the same year, like at all, anywhere near that really. But it's not a horrendous game. Do you know what I mean? Like it does. I don't want to say it does a job even really. That is in. It wasn't that bad. It just wasn't that good either. So yeah, I'd call it a bit like almost like a bit of a lovable dumb puppy that's kind of like its paws are too big for it, and it's just kind of like you love it, it's wonderful, and you love like looking at it, and it's like running around on the floor in the kitchen skating around because it can't, you know, like control itself and stuff. That's what it felt like, where you just like, you know, it runs into a cupboard and you're like, oh right, okay. That's how I can best describe Red Dead Revolver. Do I recommend that people go and play Red Dead Revolver? I'm going to give it a 5. I'm going to give it a 5. I think it is just on the right side of a recommendation to be able to go and play it, because it's not unplayable or anything. Do you know what I mean? And it's not horrendous. It's just a bit odd. And you can see how, again, going back to that point where I can understand why Rockstar actually will kind of not forget about it necessarily, but almost like, you know, Red Dead Redemption is where this starts, really. Do you know what I mean? Don't worry about Red. Don't worry about the revolver in it. Don't worry about any of that old stuff. Do you know what I mean? Just worry about this story over here.
From what I remember, I would have pegged Red Dead Revolver as something of an acquired taste.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're kind of on board with it and you gel with the controls and the kind of the sort of lumpiness of it, I can imagine you'd have a lovely time.
Yeah, it wasn't at the top end of breezy. Like, it wasn't just like, I'm having the best time here. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was a lot that was kind of like annoying about it, as you've already pointed out, for example. But also, it wasn't like at the bottom end of, you know, stodge and horrible and having to play through it. Like, I played through it all the way, and I wasn't like, you know, angry at the end. It's the best way
to
feel
put like an active waste of time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which some games we have played, so I can't put it down right at the bottom end or anything. You know, like you say, acquired tastes. So
yeah.
Okay, Red Dead, redeem me. Red Dead, redeem it.
Redemption. So this was 2010 originally.
15 years ago.
15 years ago. And I played the ever-loving what's-its out of this on the Xbox 360 back in the day, but have revisited it this time on the Switch.
Okay. What did that do for it?
Well, took out the multiplayer, for one thing.
Oh, okay.
But you do get the Undead Nightmare DLC thing bundled in.
Oh.
So if you fancy turning your Wild West experience into something more akin to a zombie apocalypse, that is absolutely an option.
But at least it tells you it's going to do that, rather than halfway through Revolver, it just kind of does it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. And even in the sort of main game itself, the world is big enough, and you have these moments of like isolation. It can do some pretty effective like creepiness anyway. I think it's the sort of thing that they do a little bit more of in Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, like that, but it stays the right side of plausible.
Okay.
So yeah, it's, as a game, it's much more akin to what you would assume Rockstar would make if they told you they were basically making a spaghetti western. You would assume Grand Theft Auto in a desert, and that is basically what you get. And holy hell, it's good. I still really enjoy it. I do. And I was trying to, like, this is one of those games that there is very little I can say that is going to, inform anybody's decision when they're listening to this or anything like that. People have already made their minds up about how they feel about this game. So for me,
you can validate those feelings.
Well, this is the thing. I was playing the Switch version. I was like, oh, you know what? Like, this is still fun. I'm still enjoying it. And I was like, okay, right. Why? Why, after 15 years, am I still sat here going like, oh yeah, I'll be a cowboy for a little while. I'll be a cowboy for a bit. And I think it is that kind of the fact that it is so effective at creating that atmosphere, and you can have those moments of feeling like you are completely isolated and alone in that space, like trudging through this wilderness. And it's the kind of thing that at one point I was like, oh, but is it too sparse? Are we straying into like actual the world is kind of empty territory here? And then the soundtrack starts to quietly pipe up a little bit, or you accidentally run over a small animal with your horse, or you stumble upon a stranger, or like there's you don't usually have to wait long before something happens. And that for me is, again, like back in the day, I went through, and I think this must be one of the few, if not the only one, that I like basically 100%ed the single player.
Okay.
Like I went and I found anyone that I could have an interaction with that would count towards the counter for people you have interacted with. I went and I found them, and I did the side quests and I did all that. And you go back to, I don't know, Vice City, you mentioned it earlier, as an example, and you go from A to B, something happens, and then you're back in that world, and you go from A to B again. You might stop and muck about on the way.
Yeah.
Whereas Red Dead Redemption finds ways to basically act more like the kind of dungeon master, if it was like Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
Like they're feeding you little side quests on the way, or little incidents, or little somethings that happen to you to kind of tempt you off the beaten path a little bit. And it's very good at just giving you those little breadcrumb trails. You don't have to follow them.
Yeah.
You can totally ignore them if you like, but they're there. And I think like that is, in terms of gameplay, because I mean it's a Rockstar game. The gunplay is solid. The moment to moment actions of being in a gunfight, because that is what you are predominantly going to be doing. That and traveling, all of that is pretty much bang on. But it's so good at that atmosphere and making you feel like there is something happening.
Yeah.
And the soundtrack is a huge part of that. And like anybody that's listened to more than a couple of episodes would know that I'm a sucker for a good soundtrack, and this is a good soundtrack.
Have you got this on vinyl?
I don't, but I did try. Yeah. And like there's definitely a couple of tracks on my phone.
Yeah,
it's that kind of thing. And it's the way it ramps up, the way it sort of dials back, the little like proper stings on the guitar, or the little quieter moments of like whistling and just noises or ambience, or like, oh, it's so good, still great. I think there's a kind of and I've been racking my brains for ages to try and explain this point, and I haven't got a good way of doing it. So I'm just going to talk at it and hope I get near what I'm trying to say.
To it. Let's see.
There's particularly compared, because I mean you kind of touched on it earlier. Red Dead Redemption 2 was like far and wide revered, right? And I appreciate it. I totally acknowledge the technical achievements it made, and I played it through. I enjoyed it. I haven't gone back to it, and I don't miss it. I think it might be the best game I don't like. Like there's
Shadow of Colossus.
Well, this is the thing. Like, I'm reasonably sure everybody has that one game that is like a critical darling, sells like absolute gangbusters, and yet there is
and you know
it's
something.
Good. Like if I was talking objectively, it's great, and I get that, and I absolutely understand why somebody would love it.
Yeah,
but for me, it was just a touch too complicated, a touch too much like it was trying to be a cowboy simulator, or a touch too much like Rockstar were trying to make a film, and not a particularly well edited one at that.
No.
Like a very like
an 80-hour
film. And like I'm not gonna sit here and bash it and try and take that like technical and artistic achievement away from it. Obviously, I'm not, because it is, like I say, objectively great.
Yeah.
But for me, when it comes to Red Dead Redemption, there's a kind of economy to it, and I don't mean like the currency in the game. I mean like it's economical. Like it's just that little bit more stripped back, and it kind of does a great job of making you feel like you're playing a Wild West video game, rather than trying to play through a Wild West film with considerably fewer moving parts.
That's
right.
Yeah, no, you've done a good point.
Thank you.
You did well.
So
that
like
made sense to me.
Well, I think the big point for me, the bit that kind of helped me start to pin this down was in Red Dead Redemption 2, you can have a vast inventory, right? You can get a lot of items that do a lot of different things, that do this, that, the other. And Red Dead Redemption 1, you kind of don't. Yeah. It's there. There's still stuff. But, like, you kind of hit a bit of a high point where you just have a camp kit that you could just unfurl, save your game, fast travel if you like, if you're out in the middle of nowhere. That's all it needs to be.
Yeah.
And that's all it does. And that's great. And it's that kind of thing. Like, it just feels like it's just stripped back by comparison enough for me to prefer it.
Yeah. I think that speaks to me definitely about both points. A video game being a video game. Now, I know you're not saying it as bluntly as that, for example.
No, but there is an element of that.
Yeah. And then also the right amount of immersiveness.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
there's a sweet spot.
Yeah.
There's a sweet spot. And I think between what you were saying about Red Dead Revolver and Red Dead Redemption 2, for me, like, Red Dead Redemption is the literal and figurative decent middle ground.
Good middle ground.
And, like, I mean, Red Dead Redemption 2, you walk past a stranger and you can kind of choose how you interact and all that kind of stuff in a way that is... doesn't take you out of what you're doing in that moment. You can use it if you like. You don't have to if you don't, which is cool. Whereas Red Dead Redemption, it's John Marsden responding and talking, not you, the player. And I think this goes back to what you kind of touched on earlier about me and mute protagonists. Like, John Marsden is, for me, a much more vivid, rounded, interesting, I dare say, character than what Arthur Morgan.
It's interesting you say that, because a lot of people, that's like almost like the thing that people love the most about Red Dead Redemption 2 is almost like Arthur's story, and loads of people seem to like really attach themselves to his arc. And
I get that, and everybody will have their Arthur. There will be a twist on an Arthur. There'll be a slight spit, like the core of Arthur will be consistent, and then you will have those little bits that you've built up over the course of, call it 80 hours or whatever, around it that makes him your Arthur. So I totally understand why people would attach themselves to that. But I would still rather spend my time with John Marsden.
It's cool.
There's something, particularly like his portrayal in this, he's clearly gone through some stuff, but he's personable. He's clearly trying to change, and the story, I think, is plenty engaging.
I do like the story for Redemption, from the bits that I'd say I probably played about 10 hours of it back in the day, and that was sort of like where I knew that it had a really, really good story that is it's just something you can connect with. Like you say, that kind of bad trying to get good. You know what I mean? Like, everyone wants to do that about themselves, don't they? Everyone wants to be, in the end, everyone wants to be a good person. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, try and work your way back to it. So it definitely helps. And sort of.
I mean, I like what they do with a lot of the characters anyway, and a lot of how they're portrayed, I think that extends to the ending and how that's all handled. Even the Undead Nightmare DLC stuff, like there is enough of, what is going on
Yeah.
in the world and these characters to make what is a reasonably, I guess, technically light, in terms of content by comparison, piece of game world feel, a bit, it elevates it somehow.
Yeah.
And, I would almost have preferred they didn't make a Redemption 2, but they did a different R word, Red Dead R something, and used a different set of characters, And I think that could have been interesting, rather than revisiting some familiar old faces and working them through for Redemption 2. I would have preferred, like, you have a Red Dead and it's kind of like more like an anthology series. Kind of like Grand Theft Auto, actually, thinking about it. So it'll be interesting to see what may or may not happen. And I think that kind of extends to my final point, which is ultimately what kind of decided the score. Because I was sitting here, I was writing up my notes and was like, am I going to give this a 10? Like, I've been pretty, quick to give out 10s.
Sorry, I was like, no, but sorry. I was already saying before you finished it.
But it was the sort of thing where I was like, and I thought about it. It was like, does that feel right? Now I'm thinking about it. Now I'm kind of at that end of the scale. Does that feel right? And I'm like, I'm not, like, if I'm just talking about the Switch version, no, I don't think so.
Okay.
And it was ultimately for two reasons. One of them was, I think I've come across a few more glitches than I did originally. I don't know if that's just because I'm looking out for that kind of thing. Even then, it wasn't anything huge. It wasn't anything like major. The worst I got, or my personal favourite, is probably more accurate. I tried to hitch my horse outside of a bar one time, and it didn't work, and the horse walked itself around to the other side of the bar and hitched itself. I was like, you know what? I can't be annoyed about that. I'm not docking points for that.
John, all right, you're doing a shit job in there. I'm going to sort myself out.
So good.
You just go in the bar. Come on,
horse was done.
Go and have a drink. You're fine, mate.
What did it for me with the Switch was the multiplayer and the fact they stripped that out. And I appreciate, it's a 15-year-old game. You can't expect them to constantly, keep servers up for these sorts of things and all that. And, you got Red Dead Online. Grand Theft Auto Online has basically eaten the world and all that. So
just put that in. Just put Red Dead DLC into. Red Dead's got its own online, hasn't it? Which is
exactly
absolutely lauded. And
I've
played that quite a bit. Red Dead 2, and it's really, really fun. It is fun. It is different from GTA Online, but
of course it is. But again, speaks to, like, compared to the multiplayer for Redemption back in the day, where it was, again, a bit more focused, a bit more economical. You were still in that world. It was basically it kind of worked, if you remember, like the kind of multiplayer you would have in Grand Theft Auto 4, where it would be basically free roaming, and then you could go to a place and start a match of something. And
get on John Marston's mobile phone.
You could get into little shootouts on the way and stuff like that. There was stuff to do, but you can tell, with the benefit of hindsight, it was clearly a stepping stone towards the vision of that kind of Red Dead online type thing. But I do feel like there is a place for it. And especially if you could, like you were saying about Red Dead Revolver and bot matches and stuff like that. I had a quick check while you were talking on the off chance to see if I could see, like, if you could do bot matches on Red Dead Redemption back in the day. I don't think you could.
Okay.
But I still, for some reason, was sat here, and if I hadn't Googled it, I would have said, I think you can. Yeah. So I don't know where I've got that from. I think I might be confusing it with some of the co-op stuff back in the day.
There's so much. The thing, you can't just Google that dead quick, because there's so many different things, different versions now. And
exactly. And I think, ultimately, what I'm disappointed about is the fact that if you take the multiplayer out, that means that I have no potential for a bot match at all. Whereas if it's still there is a slight potential.
Rapidly learning from our podcast, you love a bot match.
I do. I really enjoy a bot match. I really like having those situations where you can just go in and you like the game, you like the world, you like how it looks, sounds, plays, and you can just nip in and have like that quick little fix without having to invest hours and hours and hours into it.
Yeah.
You could just have that little short, sharp, focused session. And I think for something like a Red Dead Redemption, something like that really, really helps. Because, you know, it's the kind of game that if you want to sit there and spend dozens of hours traipsing around the world, you can. But to have an option where you can just nip in, do a quick little thing, and done, would be great.
Yeah.
Granted, you can do that in the world. There are options, but you've still got to travel there and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not the same as just starting a match. So that, and for that reason, which is a bit of a cheat, I grant you, because you know, like there's still plenty of meat on the bone. On this version and all that kind of stuff, and it's handheld, lest we forget.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was going to say that is performance-wise. I assume I know it's a game that is now 15 years old, and the Switch obviously should be able to handle that. But again, you know, it's very easy to assume that because there's been lots of Switch stuff that hasn't, you know, that's been ported and not handled. Is it that, you know? Generally, is it all right?
It's plenty good enough from what I've played. Yeah, like it's. I didn't spot anything too major. Like I say, I think there's the odd little bit where perhaps something in the background has thrown a bit of a wobbly, and you end up with your horse hitching itself to the wrong bar or whatever. But I didn't spot anything too alarming performance-wise. I mean, ultimately, you know, this is still a game where it has pacier moments, it has busier moments, but for every one of them, you're going to be herding cattle a couple of times, or wandering alone through a deserted, you know, space. A desert, if you will.
I was going to let you get there yourself.
It's been a long day. But yeah, like I think it's running at a canter a lot of the time. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.
Okay.
And I reserve the right to mulligan the absolute shit out of this when we're doing our audit at the end of the year.
Absolutely fine. If you want to shove it into something else, that's okay. I understand that. I mean, you know, we can't have. We've already had quite a few 10s, but I guess since we started almost diversifying away a little bit from the PSP and the PS Vita, you know, and still maintaining that in the podcast, but adding more games into it, we're going back to probably more games where we're going, is this, you know, these are all like the greatest games we might have played or whatever and stuff, so you're going to end up with a few more of the scores at the higher end, and I think we said that to ourselves, but therefore it is good to be, if there is something that kind of keeps you from thinking it's not going to go necessarily top echelon. Yeah,
I think ultimately what it is that because I was there originally, because I played it through originally, because I played so much of it originally, I know that what is on the Switch is not a complete package.
Yeah.
That said, it is plenty complete enough for what it needs to do.
Yeah.
But it's not like the Switch has Red Dead Online or anything like that. So I think, especially for this version, and granted, like that would have caused all sorts of nightmares when you're making it, right? I
nightmares.
Fully appreciate that having this game and going, okay, well, the PS4 version, you can play Red Dead Online, so you don't need the multiplayer, whereas the Switch version, they don't have Red Dead Online, so maybe we could do a multiplayer thing. Yeah. Like, I completely appreciate that would be an impossibility, but how cool would it have been?
Yeah.
You know?
It would be cool, yeah.
So, yeah, it feels, especially on Switch, it feels like there is a gap there that remaining piece of content from the quote-unquote complete package could have filled.
Someone will have made one for £3 and it'll be called Red Dead...
Red Deadiest Redemptionist Wild West shooting game.
Be awful.
Yeah.
For some reason... a thought that was kind of coming together in my head was almost like, as in when we talk about the three games, and obviously we haven't gone into Red Dead 2 but as much, but it was almost like
8 out of 10.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, fair enough.
Next question.
Yeah, it was almost like the way you're describing it. I think I probably feel the same way from what I've played in them all so far. Is that almost like ice creams? That is in, I can imagine like Red Dead Redemption's this really good sundae in the middle with loads of stuff on it, but just the right amount, not too much. Red Dead Redemption 2 has got the works, and it is incredible and stuff, but you kind of get 3/4 of the way through and go, this is a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
And like Red Dead Revolver is like just all the ice cream that's melted at the bottom. It's still ice cream. it's all just kind of coalesced into just mush at the bottom. You're
Not
like,
necessarily the form you were hoping for.
yeah. So that's how I see it in my head now, and that's how I'll maintain it. But yeah, and to be honest, that is in with the Red Dead Redemption 2. I keep on saying this. I will go back and I will play it, but I'm going to have to start it again because it's just too far through the story for me to. I go into it and go, oh god, like where am I? Like what am I doing? What am I able to do? What are all the buttons? Like, what's this snake oil do? Like, I'm like, Jesus.
I'm reasonably sure, like, Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of those games that I was merrily plodding my way through, and I think the only reason I managed to roll credits on it was because I was ill. Like, I think if I hadn't had, like, and I was, like, comically ill.
Yeah,
so I was,
sorry, just like laughing.
No, it's fine. Like, so I was, like, I think I was off work for like a fortnight.
Oh shit!
Kind
really?
of ill.
Yeah.
With like, so I had that and like one of the Maddens or something like that, and I was like, well, yeah, Red Dead Redemption, I can be more engaged with more of the time.
I wonder how many great gaming moments have been achieved when people have been ill, because you just get time to. That isn't no one expects anything of you. That is in stay there and rest. Okay,
Can do.
I feel absolutely terrible, but
like, to be honest with you, I think like the pace of the game helped as well, because if it like I would not have been sat there playing Call of Duty or anything like that, you know. Yeah. And I think that was why I gravitated towards Red Dead Redemption 2 rather than Madden when I was that ill as well. Was because it was that like more deliberate pace, and yet it's still like there is so much in that game that I know I could go back and I would never have seen before, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Right, we'll try next week to not talk about misbehaving horses, because we had Shadow Colossus last week, your horse this week, and Red Dead Redemption. So, we'll try and stick away from horses next week. But thank you very much for listening.
Cheers
guys. Bye-bye.